Mylette, thank you so much for being with me on my show, Genius Life. It's good to have you here.
My honor, brother. Ever since we connected on my show, I've wanted to have more conversations with you. So any way I can get one, I'm grateful.
I love that. Well, dude, I like you so much because whenever I see you speak, you always project an air of gratitude that I just think is like something the world needs more of. You're so successful, and yet you wear appreciation on your sleeve, and I think that's a quality that um, might not be something that you would expect from somebody who's achieved such great heights in their life and in their career.
Well, I mean, I, I think I have a degree of humility just because of the way that I grew up, brother. But like, I really am grateful. I know how kind of average and ordinary my skill set is. So for any of the good things that have happened to me in my life is really a product of. So some of it's my faith, and then it's a bunch of other people that really contributed to it. And I've had so many setbacks and failures that the wins, when they did come, are real emotional, and I am really, really grateful for them because of all of the really difficult times in my life.
Yeah, you are humble. You're super humble. I'd love to go into your backstory because, we're fairly new friends, but I know you have this incredible story of overcoming significant adversity in your life, and I'd love to just share that, with my audience off the top, if you wouldn't mind.
Well, I grew up in a real loving family. I mean, I can't say that it wasn't a loving family. I have great parents, but I grew up, like most families, once you go behind that front door and you're in the living room, there was some dysfunction there. And our family, that dysfunction was my dad was an alcoholic, probably a little bit of drugs too, for a long time. And I was the oldest boy of three daughters. So my sisters are all younger than me. So I was sort of left oftentimes, like my dad would tell me when he was going to go on one of his benders. I'm talking at like 4 years old, Max. You
Mm.
take care of your mom and sisters because he kind of knew he might be gone for a while. And so, by the way, my dad got sober 35 years. He just passed away. He was my best friend. But while I lived there, it was a lot of anxiety, a lot of stress, which contributed to real insecurity, shyness, super introverted when I was really little, which are not, backgrounds you want to have when you're going into business, especially if you're like a public communicator or anything like that. So it was a very trying childhood, but all of it happened for me, not to me. I'm a huge believer that that's true in your life. In hindsight, that's always the case. But if you can start to live now and go, how is this conforming for me? Which is really difficult. Like my dad dying recently, what was good about that? How's that good? But there was a lot of good in it, ironically. So all those things happen. My ability to read people came from the fact that when my dad would come through the door at 4 years old, I had to be present with my dad and read. Is this drunk dad who's going to be aggressive and maybe a little bit mean, or is this happy dad who wants to play catch? Do I need to protect my sisters or not? And so, kind of some of the things I use to this day about my reading of people started at 4 or 5 years old with my dad. And so it was all a blessing in hindsight. And if you could live that way in the present, you'd be a lot more blissful.
Yeah, you grow up real fast, I think, when you have a parent who is struggling with an addiction.
I
So
had no childhood. I just said that to somebody this morning. That's so ironic you say that. I said it just occurred to me. This is amazing, Max, that you just said that. Like I just literally, I'm 50 years old next month, and it occurred to me this morning in a conversation with my friend, and how you just confirmed it. I was never really a child. I
mm,
didn't. I get to function as a child, but yet, why is that good? It's made me a leader. I'm relatively composed under pressure and adversity. Um, what is uncomfortable is we repeat patterns in our lives, right? So I have a tendency to create chaos in my life, no matter how good it is. I function well in chaos. It's an emotional home for me. And if I'm not careful, no matter how good things are, I'll just create chaos in one way or the other so I can live where I'm most happy at home. And so a lot of us have these emotions we have that are our emotional homes. We're unaware of them sometimes. And even if they're not blissful ones, because we're home in anxiety, home in worry, home in fear, we'll create situations in our lives so that we can get those emotions because it's what we're used to having. And so even to this day, 50 years old, pretty good life. I find a way to get chaos about every chance I get. And I have to be intentional about noticing it when I do it.
man, how you've come so far. I mean, do you recommend for people that are coming from, places where maybe they are sort of navigating a chaotic home environment that you adapt the environment to better suit you, or do they just sort of develop mental tactics to become more at peace with that environment?
For me, it's both. I think awareness over ourselves. So self-awareness, awareness I'm experiencing something, or awareness I'm doing something again, it loses a lot of its power over you. once you become someone who lives an aware life, that you're intentional all the time, when I start doing these things, I just go, I'm doing it again. And it separates me from it, because here's the truth. You are bigger than your emotions. You are bigger than your thoughts. And when you become bigger than them, when you get above them and see them from a distance, they lose their impact on you and you can change them. It's when you live in them, or you're under the false belief they are bigger than you or they are who you are, is where you begin to just live in this miserable state most of the time. So I seek the emotions I want. Here's a really interesting thing. Most people seek goals every year. My goal is $100,000 or $1 million or 6% body fat or XYZ brain chemistry for you, right? Like there's these goals, external goals. But I didn't really want a jet. I wanted how I thought a jet would make me feel, the emotion it would give me. The relationship, you might want another human being in your presence, but it's the emotion you think you'd experience most regularly in that relationship. So what if you were simultaneously focused on not just the external things you want, but you actually set goals up to experience the 3 to 5 emotions you want on a regular basis? That became an intention. I'm going to experience bliss today. I'm going to experience gratitude today. You go, well, that sounds good. You'd be surprised. You know about the reticular activating system in our brains. The more you become intentional about seeking the emotions you want, you will find them just like the people, places, and things. In fact, they're easier to find. So I have goals for emotional acquisition in my day, that as much as I do the material things. And here's the thing, Max, once you're really good at executing whatever your life or your business might be, the more you can get those emotions on a regular basis, you'll get the external goals more easily. It won't be such a grind to get them. And then by the time you get there, you're fried. By the time you get there, you're burnt. You're like, I don't want to go through that again to get there. It doesn't have to be that difficult to be blissful and happy and achieve things in your life. And I think that's the new science that most of us are working on, you and I, from different angles. And I happen to think we're stepping into a new consciousness in the world where sort of my work and your work sort of begins to come together. And I don't think humans are going to live this miserably much longer. I don't think it's going to be blissful all the time. Human existence has its challenges. We're put here for some of those. But I think humans are going to start to live differently the more we combine our worlds and begin to discuss these things. I'm excited about that.
So am I. You're so brilliant, Ed. I love talking to you, and I love everything that you're putting out into the universe. But walk me through the journey. From what I understand, you were a baseball superstar from a very young age. You were on track to enter like the major leagues, but then something happened. You had a setback. Can you talk to me about that?
Yeah, I was a really good player. I don't know if I was a complete superstar or not, but I was a good player. And so I went on to college to play Division I college baseball, and I got hit with a pitch. And that pitch formed an actual tumor on my right calf, my gastrocnemius. And in those days, they didn't do it like they do now. So when they took the tumor out, they took part of my calf, the gastric, and then it grew back because they immobilized me for a year. No therapy, no immobilization, so scar tissue and the tumor reformed. Took it again, took more of my calf. Tumor grew back a third time. We've left it in there now for 25 years, so I wouldn't have a right leg. So I was basically a one-tool player. I could really run. I had other skills, but I could really run. I lost that tool. My career ended. And so like for most people, I was really faced now with like my dream ended. And a lot of people right now are there. Like my first dream ended, first relationship, first business, first whatever it might be, it ended. And I had to now, and by the way, my identity was tied to what I did, like so many people. So many of us, our identities are tied to what we do or who we're with, not who we are. And so it was such a blessing, brother, that early in life, I learned never again will my identity, my self-worth be tied to what I do, nor who I'm with. It needs to be tied to who I am as a man, what my intentions are, which we could talk a little bit about as well. And so I had to literally remake myself as a pretty young person, whereas most people will do that in their 20s, 30s, or 40s. I was doing it in my very early 20s.
Wow. Yeah. What are your intentions?
Well, so again, my dad's drinking happened for me. Got to tell you, my dad gets sober right when my career ends. Comes home from an AA meeting. My dad was a dude's dude, right? I'm unemployed. I'm living at his house, Mr. Businessman here, right? I'm in the same bed, same teddy bear, same poster on the wall from growing up. That's me, just so everybody knows.
And how old are you at this point?
After college, 22, 23. I mean, I'm not even looking for a job. I'm laying out at the pool every day, blowing life. My dad's like, I'm sick of you eating all this food out of the fridge. I got you a job. My dad got to his first AA meeting. I go, what is it? He goes, you don't get to choose. I have no idea what it is. Show up tomorrow morning at 6 a.m. It's called McKinley. I go there and it's a orphanage for boys. Here I am, this ego-driven athlete, full of testosterone. I'm going to conquer the world. All my life, I'm getting favored because I could run faster and, was stronger. And I walk in and they go, "You're in cottage 8." And I walk into cottage 8 and there were 8 boys that changed my life. They were all 8 to 10 years old. All my boys were either their parents were incarcerated, had molested them, or were dead. And all these boys wanted, man, they had these eyes. Any child who goes through a little dysfunction, you have them, Max, actually. You have these eyes that are just a little different. I have them. They're just like, just love me, just believe in me. They just wanted someone to love them, believe in them, and show them how to live better. What I've found out is I'm now 50 years old. That's what every human being wants. Love me, believe in me, and show me how to live better. And they changed my life. I was there for Christmas morning. I took them to school every day. I'd pick them up from school. I went trick-or-treating with them. I became their father at 21, 22 years old. And it transformed me because I was like, oh my God, I love this serving other people stuff. This doesn't just make me happy. This fulfills me, which is a totally different emotion. I'd had happiness in my life and sadness. I'd never had fulfillment. And fulfillment to me is when you figure out what your 2 or 3 gifts are, which we all have them, and you use them in the service of another human. And those gifts could be your beauty, your humor. In Max's case is IQ, seriously, problem solving, resiliency, toughness, whatever it might be, nurturing skills. I found mine. Mine's connecting with people, being present with people, believing in people, speaking power into people. And it changed my life. And so while I was there, I started into my business life in a financial company and then in the real estate business. And I just approached business differently. Honestly, I did not get into those businesses to become a bazillionaire because it wasn't a priority in my family. We never went on vacation. We didn't have material things. I went in because I'm like, I can use these skills I've got in the service of others. And the money came as a byproduct over time. But walking in, and again, last thing I'll just say, I don't get that job if my dad's not a drunk because he doesn't get sober and he's not at the meeting. So again, hindsight, everything's happening for us. And by the way, I don't connect with these children like I did if I didn't go through some dysfunction myself. And I think even on social media or creating content or being a speaker or a coach, I wouldn't connect with people if I couldn't empathize with them. And last thing I'll say is one of my wishes for the world right now is there was more empathy for one another and that there were leaders out there that were just more empathetic towards what people are going through. And because we all want to be happier. We all want to be blissful. And by and large, humans are good. They're hurting. They're broken. They're in pain. And they need people to help them live better. Love them, care about them, believe in them, and help them live better.
Yeah, I mean, there's so much that you just said that I would love to just tease out. Just the idea of taking adversity, taking your trauma, whatever it is. You have like 2 options in the way that you react to trauma, right? You can either let it sink you, or you can use it as a rocket ship. You can use it to inspire you to create change in your own life and in the lives of others. And I know that's what you've done, and that's why I relate so much to you because that's what I've done. And I feel like it really is the ultimate way to make sure that the suffering that you experience, that we all experience, isn't ever in vain. Because you use it to help others. You use it in the name of service.
Flip it around. Who would I be without that suffering? I'd just be a guy. Who would you be without your suffering? People listening to this or watching, who would you be without it? It defines the gift you're going to give to people. It doesn't define who you are, but it's the definition of the gift. Through that suffering, through that pain, through that experience, that is the actual pathway to you living your best life. Like, I know it's so corny to go, this was the gift. Forget all that stuff. That sounds hokey. You take those experiences away from me. I don't know what I have to offer people. That is what I have to offer people. Thank God for that stuff at this stage of my life. Would I wish it on another child? No, but I do wish difficulty on some people. I do wish challenge on people. I feel bad. I have a couple friends, you probably do too, that just grew up with everything. Everything. They are my most miserable friends. They don't have anything to go for or overcome and frankly, not a lot to offer in the way of empathy or insight. They can't connect with what I went through. They never had anything to do with that. So I just think it's such a important for everyone listening, like unpack it a little bit more. Look, don't avoid what happened to you. There's this great blessing and gift sitting in there if you'll unpack it and evaluate it just a little bit more. And for me, as I get older and older, it's like every single day, it seems to me more and more is revealed to me that, wow, that not defined who I was, it defined what I could give. And thank God for it.
Yeah, there's this great line, and I'm going to paraphrase it because I don't remember it word for word, but it's something like, that which is we don't covet that which is easily obtained. You
That's right.
know, if something's just given to you, you don't value it.
That's
You don't appreciate it.
I was coaching yesterday of an NDA, so I won't say who, but a guy who was a very, very, very well known world leader at one time. He no longer is. He may be again, but he's not right now. And it just came out of me when I said it. I said, so and so. I said, convenience and greatness cannot coexist. Convenience and something special will never coexist. The very fact that it's incredibly inconvenient is an actual indicator that there's potentially something incredibly precious, blessed, and special associated on the other side of it. And just for that person in that moment, they needed to hear it. And I said, let's go back through the 5 best things in your life ever. They were almost all the most inconvenient things. Ask any mother if carrying a child for 8 to 10 months is convenient, or
Mm.
childbirth is convenient. Yet on the other side of that is oftentimes the greatest blessings of their lives. And so convenience and greatness, convenience and special, even if you get into a relationship, you have these friends of mine, it was just so easy. We just sort of, everyone supported. It was convenient for all our friends. And then really, how special is it 5, 8 years later? Sometimes the greatest relationships you have were the most inconvenient, the most difficult. You had the most stacked against you. That might be the special relationship. Not every time, but most of the time, those ones that just kind of fall into place, even my wife and I, yeah, everyone goes, well, you guys met in kindergarten, you dated in high school. And so that's our story. And we're married now. You have no idea how inconvenient that crap is. We broke up for years. If you don't have a breakup when you met someone in high school, would I have wondered what would be, what I'm saying? So it wasn't convenient at all. It was a blessing, but it wasn't convenient. So special and convenient do not coexist usually.
I love that. Yeah. I mean, we experience the world through relationships. The sweet is never sweet without the bitter. You know,
Exactly.
Whenever you're making a dessert, like even if you're making cookies, you got to put a little bit of salt
Thank
in
you.
in there so that you taste the sweet and appreciate the sweet.
Thank you. Agreed.
I love that. Talk to me a little bit about confidence because you mentioned very briefly that you grew up being very shy and introverted, which
Yes.
is not something, I don't think anybody who knows you today would paint you as being a shy and introverted person. So how do you overcome that, and go on to become the seemingly uber confident person that you are today?
I would say that I've become confident, but that I am still introverted. So socially, if we were together, I would be the quiet one at the table. I
Hmm.
like to listen. I don't know if that's shyness, but I'm a more of a listener than a talker in real life. When this is not that this isn't real life, but we're talking today, right? But if there were 10 of us, I would be the one speaking the least, probably, honestly. My confidence did change because I didn't have any. One, I've kept the promises I've made to myself. I think the building block of self-confidence is self-trust. And when you begin to keep promises you make to yourself, small ones, you believe you can do the big ones. When I meet someone who lacks self-confidence, it's not just their experience in their life. This is someone who said they're going to get up at a certain time and didn't. Said they were going to eat a certain way and didn't. Said they're going to make a certain amount of phone calls and didn't. So for me, my self-confidence started to stem from doing the things other people aren't willing to do. I would get things other people aren't willing to get, and keeping the promises I make to Ed Milet. That's where it starts. Then I had a breakthrough, brother, when I was in my mid 20s that served me the rest of my life that I want to share with the audience because I think this might be a breakthrough for them. My confidence, because it's what we've always been taught, was always predicated on my ability to do something or the fact that I executed. So if you get really good at this, you'll have more confidence. Or if you score a bunch of points, you'll think you can score more points. Well, you're always going to be trailing if that's the case. Think about that logically. What if everything that requires your confidence you have to actually get proficient at first? That's a difficult way to live life. And I was running on the beach in Hawaii. I won my first contest ever in my financial company. Running on the beach, 4:30 in the morning. This guy's running towards me the other way. Now, again, I'm there because I'm doing things I promised myself to do. So here's the blessing. I promised myself I get up and run. I did. The guy running back towards me was, your audience may be too young to know him, but was Wayne Dyer, who is a very well-known, wise, self-improvement, wisdom of the ages guy. And at that time, there was Tony Robbins and Wayne Dyer. Tony was jump up and down and yell. Wayne Dyer was meditate and get quiet, right? And he comes running right by me. And I said, "Oh my gosh, I have a Sony Walkman on." That's how old I am, audience. And I try to say, "Mr. Dyer, Dr. Dyer, you changed my life." And he's running the other way. And I love, when someone says that to me to this day, I stop, right? Because he stopped. And he turns, you'll love this, Max, and he goes, "I doubt that. I bet you changed your life." But what did I do? He says, when he's running, and he says, "Tell me." He turns around and walks towards me. And I'm 30 years old. I end up sitting on the beach in Maui with Wayne Dyer watching the sun come up. What a blessing. I think he sent something in me, maybe. And anyway, he was writing a book called The Power of Intention. This leads to self-confidence. And he said to me, he said, "Ed, you're a beautiful man. You're a gift to the world." He said, "I'm starting to think you're superhuman." He just spoke beauty into me, right? Starting to think you're from another planet. I think you're superhuman. You're going to change the world. The way you talk, the way you communicate. I'm 30 years old, right? And he goes, "Why don't you start giving yourself credit for your intentions? What if all of your self-confidence came from you intend to do good? What if that was the linkage?" And it altered me. And we talked about, so to this day, brother, my confidence comes from the fact, like today, I'm confident doing this show because I know a lot of stuff. No, I'm confident because right before this happened, I got quiet. I prayed real quick. My intention is that someone's life changes listening to this today. I have good intentions. So I know I intend to do well. I know I intend to serve. I know if I don't know something, I'll go get the answer. So my self-confidence, honestly, comes from something I believe to be true about me, which is that I'm a good man. I'm not the smartest man. I'm not the strongest man, but I'm a good man. And if you're listening to this, if you're a good woman or a good man, what if you started to generate your self-confidence from that place? And it's not always externally qualified. If confidence is always externally qualified by, I got to do this, I got to do that, then I'll have this, well, you'll be chasing that tail forever. But what if you started to just stand strong in your own power and say, you know what? I don't have all the answers. I'm not perfect. I've made mistakes, but I'm a good person who intends to do good for other people. And because that's the case, there's karma, there's vibrations in the world. If you're a person of Christianity, there you reap what you sow. That, you know what? I am going to get greatness in my life, and I deserve it because I'm a good human and I intend to make a difference. So in all candor, that's where a lot of my confidence comes from. Promises I keep to myself and the fact that I have good intentions. That conversation changed my life. Maybe today it'll change someone else's.
It reminds me of what psychologist Jordan Peterson always calls the noble aim. You know, it's
Yes.
sort of like when you have something larger than yourself to serve as your North Star, you know, and I think like morality or, you know, just being what in your head sort of is the picture of a good person,
Mhm.
it takes ego out of it.
It does. And when I make mistakes, I'll tell you one thing, I separate from my mistakes. So one little thing I've always done, I don't know why I do it. I am not my behavior all the time. So when I do make an error, or like my son's a golfer, you know this. I taught my son when people miss a putt in golf, you know what they usually say, golfers, "I suck. I can't putt." And I've taught him when he misses to say, "That's not like me. That's not like me. That's not who I am." And he's wired this thousands of times because his identity is that he's a great putter. So we're always going to be consistent with our identity. We're always going to be consistent with the thoughts, beliefs, and concepts we hold to be true about ourselves. That's the governor of our lives. So if you make a mistake, that's not like me. That's not me. And separate from it rather than connect it. Because we do, I'm so stupid. I did it again. I can't believe I always do this. Right? That's linking your mistakes to who you are. You don't do that when you win. When you win, you don't go, "That's who I am. I'm amazing." You don't do that. It's external. So what if you started linking the mistakes to be, "That's not me," when you miss the putts of life? I've always done that. So my failures haven't stacked on me. They haven't weighed me down to some extent. Like I think a lot of people's failures or setbacks do because they think they are those things. You're not your thoughts, you're not your emotions, and oftentimes you're not always just how you behave. You are your soul. You are your intention. You are your spirit. You are your strength. That's who you are. You are your brain. That's who you are.
These are really, really wonderful tools to help deal with self-criticism. So I'm now curious how you deal with, you know, external criticism. Like when people, you know, when people criticize you, whether they're haters online, people in the workplace that don't like you, or you know, even family members that aren't necessarily as supportive of your goals and dreams as you would wish them to be.
Yeah. So a few things. One, it does bother me. I'm human. I want people to like me. I'm a people pleaser. And I don't think that's a negative. So what I do is I would ask everyone to do this. Make a distinction between a hater and an antagonist.
Mm.
And someone who's intentionally antagonistic against you, who's conspiring to do harm to you or slow you down or prevent you, that's an antagonist. You need to confront them. That needs to be confronted and it needs to be fixed. Someone who's a hater, who talks a little smack, who makes a comment here or there, one, typically who's ever doing that isn't living life more happily or better than you. Very rarely will you ever be criticized by somebody living better than you or in front of you. So I distinguish between that. The other thing I found out is most people aren't thinking about you. They're thinking about what you're thinking about them. And what's happened is in a weak moment, something leaked out of them, a comment online, or you walk out of a room, oh, she's still into herself, or he thinks he thinks he's the smartest guy in the room, right? It leaks out. They don't really mean it. And I'll tell you how I know this. Very rarely do I do it. But I did this weekend. I made a post and someone said something on there. I never do this, but I did this weekend. I actually direct messaged the person. I said, hey, that wasn't very nice. Why would you say something like that? You said such nice things before on here. This is out of like 4,000 comments. The guy hits me back. He's like, oh my God, I didn't even mean it. I'm so sorry. I was in a bad moment. I had a little whiskey. Please accept my apology. So oftentimes they don't even really mean what they're saying. It's their own weakness, their own negativity, their own fear, their own anxiety leaking out of them. And so a blissful and happy person would never do that to you. So it is honestly an indictment on them. And I know everyone's heard this before, but like, I really feel sympathy for some. Can you imagine, Max, at any point in your life, typing something online, like taking that time out of your life to spew something like that? So normally they're not in front of you. They're behind you. They're not happy. 2, it's their own weakness leaking out. 3, they actually don't mean most of it. I'm not dumb enough to look. I've been at dinners where there's a bunch of people there asking me for my advice and revering me. I'm not dumb enough to know that when I walk out, one of them's like, this guy, come on. I know that. That's their own insecurity that everybody in the conversation wanted to talk to me and not them. So it doesn't really bother me. And remember this, they're not thinking about you. They're thinking about what you're thinking about them most of the time.
Yeah, there's that amazing quote. If you want to avoid criticism, do nothing, say nothing, be nothing.
Now, if they're an antagonist, though, that's different. Some of you have someone in your life who's conspiring to do you harm. You better distinguish between those people. And then the last thing is, you may just have some people who love you that actually are concerned. Like my mom and dad, when I was in business and going broke, they weren't hating on me. They were really worried about their son who was going broke. And some of the stuff they had to say, I needed to listen to. So make that distinction too. There's another category.
Yeah. I want to switch gears a little bit and talk about this concept of the Pareto principle, which I'm sure that you're, I don't even know if I'm pronouncing that right. It's a concept that I've read a million times, but this idea that 80% of the consequences come from 20% of the causes. Like if we do the 20% right, then we're going to yield 80% of the gains. Mm-hmm. So in your view, I mean, you've achieved such an incredible level of success. You have followers from all around the world. On your podcast, your amazing podcast, you talk to the world's most brilliant visionaries. So what is like the 20% that you would say people should be doing, every day? Maybe your top 5 or so tips that people can use to achieve greater success in their personal and professional lives.
First is what you just said is brilliant. It's actually looking for that. What's the point of biggest impact I can make? So for me, there's a few things. Time. So I've changed the way that I measure time. A 24-hour day was just something some dude made up about how the sun and the earth rotate, right? And the bottom line is those 24-hour days were contrived pre-internet. So the fact that we still measure a day in 24 hours is literally insane based on the speed at which we can communicate with each other and get access to information and do something like this. Even your show like mine, everything was in person. This would have taken 8 hours out of both of our days. Today it's going to take an hour. So I run what I call mini days. I get 3 days in a day. So I get 3 lives in one life. So my first day starts at 6 a.m., runs till noon. That's a full freaking day. So in that day, I'm gonna get my fitness, my happiness, my bliss, my prayer, my humor, my friendship, my productivity, my business, my money. That's a day, 6 hours. If you think a dude or a lady, listen to this, in 6 hours can't get more done than someone got in 1884, you are out of your damn mind. We got cars, we got planes, we got tech. So it shouldn't be 24 hours. People who measure 24 hours now are insane. But I'm the only dude talking about this crap. Second day, noon to 6 p.m. That's a second day. I start over. Same thing. Bliss, happiness, productivity, money, success, all that stuff. Fun, 6 hours. Third day, 6 p.m. to midnight. I get 3 days in a day. That's 21 days a week. When something becomes scarce, it becomes valuable. That's why diamonds are more expensive than paper. When you make hours more scarce, they become more valuable. Not only will you do more, People will respond to you differently because you're vibrating and talking faster because your time is more scarce. So everything changes when you do that. Your productivity, your happiness, how the world responds to you. And you stack that up over what is a normal month, a normal 6 months, a normal year. Give me 3 years where I get 3 days and you get 1 day every freaking day, and I will smoke you in the game of life, right? So and by the way, I have a little clock that goes off at the top of every hour in my head. I just was doing another show. Boom, the hour, I'm with Max. An hour goes off. It's a new way. What do I need to do? What do most people do? The end of a month, the end of a year. How do I redouble my efforts? What are my goals? What if that happened every 6 hours? You're like, all right, day 2. What do I got? What do I need to double? I didn't get my nutrition done. Oh, I didn't. You know, you do that at the end of a day. You're like, oh my gosh, I forgot to do this. What if that happened every 6 hours? You recalibrated. You got back on course. How hard would it be for your life to get off course if you were recalibrating every mini day? And so this happened to me, bro, like 23 years ago or so. 20 years ago. It was actually before the internet. But like when everyone was using it, and it's changed my life. Like I am more productive. I literally live that way now. Like it's work at first, and it no longer is. And one more thing, I guess I'll just say to that, because it's a long answer, is I try to do feared things first in every one of those 3 days. Not first things first, feared things first. Because when you knock out something you're afraid of, you create tremendous momentum. You are downhill the rest of your day when you knock that out. So if I'm most fearful the first day of the cold shower, I knock that sucker out. If the second day it's calling someone that I'm in a contentious dynamic with, I knock that one out first. Feared things first, momentum the rest of that mini day. So those are 2 real keys.
Those are incredible. And I knew that you were gifted and talented and all these amazing things, but I had no idea that you were able to redefine quantum physics. I mean, Ed Milet, everybody, you heard it here first. He has 3 days in a day.
Yep. Bending time, manipulating time. And by the way, just as a general term, the most successful people you and I know view time differently. They're in a bigger hurry. So this is just my way of doing it.
Yeah. You mentioned that in your first day, from the time in which you wake up to about noon, you get exercise in. Talk to me about your relationship with exercise.
Number one catalyst probably in my life beyond faith is moving my body. So I do correlate myself as an athlete still. So even though I'm not one anymore, I view myself as an athlete. I think all business people should view themselves as athletes, and all athletes should view themselves as business people. So if I were coaching someone who's a business person, I talk about them first as an athlete. I want to look at how you move your body, your flexibility, your energy, your hydration. I've learned from you on my show things I was doing wrong, that I was putting my body with a lot of these processed foods that I've, to an extent, really stopped doing. So for me, it gets up with my fitness. It starts with my fitness. I train now 5 days a week because I'm near 50. I'm sort of old school. Like I still do chest is Mondays, leg day is Wednesday. I still do that. I take confidence in my physique, meaning it's one of the areas where I feel like I can dominate a room as I'm just physically more present. My abs are stronger. My breathing is better. I perform at my peak level throughout the day longer and more often because I'm fit. And so it's the catalyst for me. It's also the place I can control. I can't control who responds to a call I make, who likes or doesn't like our podcast, what happens in a boardroom in a business deal. I can control whether I get up and do my training. It's something every day I can keep that promise to myself every single day. And I've linked all of any success I have. And when I don't do it, I'm miserable. Like it's kryptonite for me if I don't train in a given day. I cannot even begin to tell you how important it is for me.
It's so important. So your routine is mostly like a resistance training routine, you would say?
I do a lot of resistance training. I drink a lot of water, more after talking with you. And I just this year started doing, and don't wait till you're my age because I'm probably the oldest person in your audience. I've done much more yoga and flexibility, pliability. Brady is a friend of mine, Tom Brady, pretty good friend over the years. So I'm trying to become more pliable, just more comfortable. When you lift weights that long, as you know, it takes a toll on your joints and your tendons. And so I am doing much more stretching. Probably the greatest gift I give myself now is yoga and stretching. Like it actually sets my spirit more quiet. Weight training, heavy weight training is like this dominant, intense, dispense justice and violence, and so that's one persona for me. And I come out of my day, but if in my second or third mini day, I can get 20 minutes of stretching or yoga in, that changes my disposition as well. And I want to be both guys. I want to be that dominant, strong dude. And then I also want to be this guy who's at peace, who's a better listener, who's more nurturing. And believe it or not, the way I move my body is pretty indicative of which guy shows up. And so that's why I'm doing both.
I love that. I before jumping on this call with you, I polled my Instagram audience for questions that they might have had for you, and somebody asked for Ed Milet's best piece of advice for people in their 20s, and then the best piece of advice that you have for people in their 30s.
Okay. 20s. Stop listening to everybody out there who's telling you to be patient. So you're at that age now where you can achieve whatever you want in your 20s. Listen, I was a very wealthy guy in my 20s. Mark Zuckerberg got wealthy in his 20s. Mark Cuban got wealthy in his 20s. I'm talking about if wealth is one of those things, or just influence, or the difference that you want to make. So my first advice to you is that because of technology, the idea that you need to wait into your 30s or 40s to accomplish things is insane. That doesn't mean don't enjoy your life. That doesn't mean don't be blissful. I don't equate success or achieving things with lack of happiness. That's an odd equivalency people make. But I do think that you can get it done earlier now than ever. You have that world at your fingertips to have access. These things right here, I know we all think we know it. You can run a business out of here. You can run your life out of here. And I would also tell you in your 20s to dream big. Dream as big as you can. Have some big old huge dreams. The extent that you dream big in your life is directly correlated to what you can achieve. Not enough people talk about just dreaming big. Like if you couldn't fail, what would your life look like? What would your relationships look like? What would your body look like? Where would you live? Like dream big and spend some intentional time. Max can tell you better than I can about what that's doing to your brain and how you're wiring yourself to become familiar with it and you'll move towards it. And so for me, I'm a big dreamer, always have been early in my 20s. I don't think enough young people dream anymore. I don't think they get into their own mind enough and get off of the technology. So my advice to you would be go right now. My advice to you in your 30s is you're in your prime. If you're in your 30s, you've had the experience of your 20s. You've had some setbacks now, haven't you? If you're listening to this, you've had some failures. You've learned some lessons. Some people have let you down. You found out you're a little bit more resilient and tougher than you thought you were. And so this is the go time. This is where you execute. Your execution, you're at the peak of yourself energy-wise, experience. You got everything conspiring in your favor now. And for both the peoples in their 20s and 30s, those people in both those groups, what the last year has done is it has sped our world, our consciousness up about 10 or 20 years, and it becomes to business and life. The next 3 to 5 years are going to be light year transformations in the world, from virtual reality to, Max, our shows in 3 or 4 or 5 years, can you imagine? We used to film this on Skype with a computer because there was no avatar to shoot this thing against. We couldn't even see each other. You can have autonomous vehicles. Myself, A-Rod, and some other people, we're investors in an autonomous vehicle, flying vehicles. They're already it's not that the vehicles don't work. It's getting the technology in place so that people don't run into each other that we're waiting for. So recruiting, doing business, it doesn't not 23 or 25 hours anymore, 25 miles. You can recruit someone from all over the world for work for you. The number 2 person on my social media team right now lives in Italy. That's where they live. They could have never hired them before. So the world, all of your experience, if you're in your 30s, man, it is time for you to execute. And the other thing is, both your 20s and 30s, you are going to live past 100 years old, more than likely. More than likely, if you care for yourself, your life expectancy will be into its 90s, maybe past the 100 mark. So life is long. So I'm not saying, when I say don't be patient, I'm just saying have a long-term perspective. Save the money you make because you're going to need a lot of it to live a long time. You're not going to probably die at 65 or 75. You're going to need a lot of money. And so go make your dreams come true. Think bigger. Like, people don't think big enough anymore. They watch other people do big things and they go, okay, I can do 10% of that. Think big, dream big. That's what life's about. So that'd be my advice.
I love that so much. There was there's this crazy statistic that, they asked a bunch of like really young kids like what they want to be when they grow up, and some crazy percentage of them responded, "I want to be an influencer."
I saw that.
I don't know the exact number, but it was crazy. For the first time ever, young kids, they don't aspire to be these, doctors or astronauts or whatever,
Yep. I saw that. I forget what the percentage was as well. But by the way, in this world today, not to interrupt you, but we're all influencers now. Like, all of us have some form of influence. And, I just got to be honest with you, brother. I'm optimistic, so optimistic about humanity. I want to see us treat each other better. And I feel like all of us have this role we could play. I don't mean to be preaching, but like, we've never treated each other worse than we do now. If you disagree with me politically, you're evil, or you didn't say the right word on something, you should be banned forever. And I just feel like that's because people don't feel good about themselves. So if you're an influencer, if you can just help someone else feel good about themselves, if you can inspire and encourage people. I don't mean that in a hokey way either. Max obviously has this huge following and obviously makes a difference. You think, well, I got, 2,100 people. Well, if someone listens to you or they listen to Max, that same person's life could be changed by either one of you. It's not magnified because he's got more people. More people hear him. So take advantage of your influence.
Yeah, I don't think of myself as an influencer. I mean, I just think of myself as somebody who's learning and sharing.
Me too.
That's it. I mean, like the whole concept of, I mean, I'm very grateful that I get to do this for a living, right? And if I didn't have, some artificial statistic numbers, like in terms of like my downloads or something like that, I wouldn't be able to do this for a living, right? But beyond that, I don't think about like numbers or anything like that at all
I
because
never do either, but that's one of the reasons that I'm not trying to float your boat, but like one of the things that revered you to me, and by the way, from the people that introduced you to me, is your humility and that you are a learner. Like Tom Bilyeu and I have talked about this, like we both define ourselves as learners. And then I just sort of give people the gift of what I've just learned if it applies to them. That's how I look at it as well. So I think that the fact that you approach everything you do with such humility has caused you to seek more and more knowledge. You're someone who's, look, the people I like in my life have a quality. One of them is they're very self-aware and they're very curious. And I think you're both of those things. You're very curious. It's a quality that I think everyone of seeking in their friends, self-awareness and curiosity.
such important characteristics, and you can cultivate those as well. If you're not somebody who's very self-aware, if you're not somebody who's very curious. I did an interview with Rich Diviney, who's a former Navy SEAL commander, and he talks about attributes and how you can cultivate these attributes. And I think curiosity and self-awareness are definitely two of them that make for a successful person, and they're not something that are hardwired within you. You can grow and develop them, which I think is super empowering.
I
Um,
interviewed him. Well, I interviewed him as well, and I took away the same exact thing.
oh,
Yeah,
cool.
yeah, same exact.
I love that. Having a podcast is so great,
It
and that
is.
it lets you just, connect with brilliant people. Like this is how we became friends,
Yeah.
via the medium of podcasting and to create content that inspires others. I mean, it's such a gift. It really is. Well, I feel like I could talk to you forever, and I'm sure under different circumstances we'd go out and get lunch, but we're recording this remotely.
Right.
Uh, it's sort of like the name of the game these days. But I've got one last question to ask you before we get to that. Where can listeners connect with you on social media, and where can they find your podcast?
Ed Mylett, EDMYLETT, everywhere. So podcast, YouTube or Instagram. My main platform that I post daily on though is Instagram more than any others, but YouTube channel and iTunes or Spotify or whatever.
Got it. And your podcast is available everywhere. It's an amazing
Yep.
show. I've had the privilege of being on it. Uh, it's great. You're a great interviewer as well.
Thank you.
So
People still talk about our show, bro. Like I still get messages every single week about our show.
that's
And
awesome.
what I found out, Max? Turns out the ladies like you, brother. The ladies, the Max. I'm telling you, I'm sick of getting messages about how hot Max is. Great.
Oh my God. I'm I'm blushing. I'm blushing. You've given me goosebumps over the course of this interview, and you've made me blush, Ed. So,
And that's what I'm here for.
and it's called Maxed Out. Like,
It is. I named it after my son, Max. So Max Out. It's my podcast.
I love that. That's awesome. I still remember when I told you on your podcast that breakfast is breaking the fast, and that was a mind-blowing moment for you, which,
Thank you for sharing that.
you know, uh, with all the brilliant people that you've had on your show, the fact that I was able to blow your mind with that,
Yeah.
uh,
The fact
very,
that I left that in post editing to embarrass myself was also a credit to me as well. So yeah, the whole world now knows that my dumbass did not know breakfast was break fast. But there you go.
is your credit. Well, you're so humble, and you're a gift to all those who know you. So, the last question that gets asked to everybody on the show, Ed, what does it mean to you to live a genius life? What does living a genius life mean to you?
For me, it's learning. I feel like I'm in my most genius state when I am learning, when I am curious, as we said earlier. And for me, I think knowledge isn't power unless it's applied. So when I learn something, I feel this burning obligation, like burning desire to go share that information with another human being. And that's why this medium that we're both involved in is so important to me, because I am learning all the time. I am reading, I am experiencing life too. And I've had 50 years of a pretty unique life. And so to be able to share those lessons, and I'll share this with you last, genius thing. Last year, my birthday, my daughter, who talks a lot of smack to me, said, "Hey Dad, are you, I think, what's up with this midlife crisis you're going through?" This is my teenage daughter. And I'm like, "Midlife crisis? What are you talking about?" She goes, "Come on, Dad, Instagram, the selfies, you're dyeing your beard. I think there's some dark in there now, you know." And I said, "You know what, Bella Boo? Daddy is in a midlife crisis, but I was in a young life crisis too. When I was 20 years old, I was in a crisis to be a different human being when I was 21. And Max was little. I got to tell you, we're at a car wash. This guy's there every Sunday, Max, and he goes, 'Enjoy your 7-year-old, because when he turns 8, the 7-year-old's gone forever.' Because that's what happens with kids. And when he turns 9, the 8-year-old's gone forever." And I said, "Sir, with all due respect, when age did that stop for you?" And he looked at me and says, "I don't know." And I said, "Well, you should figure that out." And so for me, that's never stopped. So the 30-year-old me, when I turn 31, the 30-year-old should be gone forever. And the 40-year-old, when I turn 41, should be gone forever. Every year you should be replacing yourself with this newer and better version legitimately, and you have to seek it all the way up to death. Because to me, whether you're a person of faith or not, living a genius life ends up like this. When you die, whatever you believe, I think you get introduced to the person you could have been. To me, a genius life heaven is I meet the man I could have been, and we're identical twins. I had the experiences, the memories, the contribution, the moments, the relationships that I was destined to have. Hell is I meet that man and we're total strangers. I didn't have the moments. I didn't have the memories. To me, that's a lack of a genius life. A genius life is you meet the man or woman you are capable of becoming someday, and you were identical twins. And that requires crisis all the time to get to that next level in a really healthy way. So that to me is a genius life.
You're also with every new year, with every new day, you're shedding the skin.
That's right.
Of time past, and you owe yourself nothing. You owe your past self nothing, because that past self had beliefs and narratives, that you don't have to continue to carry the torch for.
That's right. Well, you know this better than I do, but we're remaking our digestive tract right now as we're doing. Our lung tissue is changing, right? Like,
yeah.
Cellularly, we're constantly replacing ourselves all the time. And so if that's true internally, it should be true externally as well. And so you just got to be intentional about it. Your lung tissue is going to regenerate itself. So is your digestive tract, whether you think about it or not. You have to consciously change the rest of you. And so that's what I focus on.
I love that. Well, you are a wealth of inspiration and of knowledge, and I recommend to everybody listening to this that they go seek out Ed's content, consume it, absorb it, put it into practice. You'll become better for it. I know that I have, just in the brief span that we've known each other. So I just want to say thank you and celebrate you. You're the man. You're welcome back whenever you want to come on. And to all you guys out there listening, take a moment to share this episode of the show. Highlight your favorite quote from Ed. Tag him, tag myself. Help us grow the Genius Life. You guys have been so amazing at doing that, and I really appreciate it. Text me to let me know what you thought about this episode of the show. You can do that by hitting up 310-299-9401. I would love to hear from you there, and I'll catch you on the next episode. Peace, guys.